September 30th, 2011 is a day that was going to change my life forever. I didn't think about it when I left home. And talking to the people in the office the day I left, got on the road that day, I actually skipped out of the office making jokes and cracking wise. So that night, it's about 9 o'clock at night, I'm up on the mountain. It's about 8,000 feet in elevation. Oh, it's an unincorporated area of Amador County, California. It's a pretty remote location. There's not a whole lot of people up there. It takes about a half hour to 45 minutes to get a response up there when you need assistance. So it's a ways up in the mountains. So I was up there going eastbound. I see a vehicle code violation going the opposite direction. So I attempt to overtake the vehicle. I turned around, sped up. As I was getting ready to enter a curve at 102 miles an hour, which I had done a couple months prior, but it hadn't snowed. So there's a little bit of sand on the shoulder up there. And when I hit that sand, the car counter-rotated, went across the eastbound lane, and it struck a tree at about 98 miles an hour. So fortunately for me, I was wearing my body armor, I was wearing my seatbelt. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. But being up there and making that decision that day, it left me on the side of the road by myself, 9 o'clock at night, up on a mountain. But luckily for me, there was a guy that was on vacation with his wife and two daughters. His name's Tim Peterson, his deputy out of El Dorado County. He's happened to be on the way up to Caples Lake. He's going to go on vacation up there. He's seen some flashing lights on the side of the road. As he did, him and his wife, they pull over. He ran down to the car to see what was going on. He's seen this wreck. And he seen me strapped in the front seat with my head slumped over to the side, blood everywhere. I was unconscious. I had multiple fractures, concussion. I had severed artery at the time. He didn't know that. I had severed nerves, a lot of damage to myself. And I was dying on the side of the road. Tim, fortunately for me, had worked a Rubicon post, which he was up in a remote area, and he was used to dealing with incidents like this quite a bit. As he did, he went back to his patrol car, and that night, his wife said he never took his radio extender with him on vacation, but for some reason that night he did. And fortunately for me, he had that in there, and he was able to make contact, and he got some help coming to me. Tim kept me alive for about 25 minutes until the fire department got there. A little while later, other officers got there, and they were able to fly in a helicopter. It took about an hour to get me out of the car. They got me loaded into a helicopter, and my flight to Reno, Nevada was about to start. So, if I could back up just a little bit, about 9:30 that same night, my wife received a phone call. A lot of times we don't talk to our spouses in law enforcement about what's going to happen to us. And that night, my wife didn't expect a phone call that her husband was been involved in a collision. They didn't know his status. They didn't know if he was going to make it. They didn't know anything. But that there was another officer who was going to come pick her up. There was a sergeant from the Stockton CHP office came to get her. He was going to take her to an airport. They were going to put her on a helicopter. My lieutenant was waiting for her, and they were going to fly out of state to Reno, Nevada, to where I was being transferred. So we had 4 kids at home. We had just went through an adoption a week and a half before this accident. We had just adopted a little girl. She wasn't even 2 years old. We had 3 of our kids already there, plus a little girl. So we had 4 kids at home. The kids were having a sleepover that night. There was other kids, but fortunately, my wife's family lived just down the road, and they were able to respond over. The sergeant picked up my wife, and she got on a helicopter. And I tell you this only because in law enforcement, we don't just take this journey alone. We take our spouses on that ride, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. And they're going to suffer just like we're suffering. My wife definitely suffered just as much as I did throughout this whole process. And so they flew me. My heart began to fade out. My blood pressure dropped, and I coded on the ambulance, air helicopter on the way over to the hospital, and they did life-saving measures to keep me going. When I got to the hospital, once again, my blood pressure dropped, and they went ahead and they did life-saving measures to keep me going at the hospital. So there was some multiple surgeries that had to be performed on me, blood transfusions, things to keep me sustained. And so this time I had no memory. I lost actually a total of 9 days, 2 days before the accident and 7 days afterwards. And so October 7th, after these surgeries, everybody's there. I start coming out. There's a doctor, I don't really remember the conversation. My wife had talked to him. They're discussing what my options were. And they said, Mike's nerves have been severed. We don't know what's going to happen. All we know is we've done surgery twice, and we don't know what we're going to be able to do with his leg. We just don't know. So they said, my wife, what do you want to do? And she goes, well, what's his options? Well, if we do surgery, he could be in a wheelchair for an undetermined amount of time. We could do multiple surgeries, and we may have to amputate anyway. And if we can't salvage the knee, the other option is we just cut it off wherever we could salvage his leg, and that way he could at least have a prosthetic. His law enforcement career is going to be over, but he will be able to get back to a semi-normal life. And so October 8th, when I sort of came to, they started waking me back up. I looked down, and I didn't have a leg. They had amputated my leg above the right knee, so I didn't have a knee. So I looked around, though, and I felt encouraged because the first thing I said, my beautiful wife sitting right there. My kids were around. And all my coworkers, all these guys in uniform were everywhere. And so I felt encouraged. I felt like, hey, this is a tragic event. They started telling me what had happened. I had no memory, so they had to recount sort of what went on until I got the official report about 8 months later. And I said, you know what, that's okay. Everybody's here to support me. I think it's going to be all right. And so after being in the hospital for about a month, they ended up transferring me back to Stockton, so I got to go home. And man, was it a ride. I got to get in a helicopter. I was cruising in the front seat of the helicopter with one leg. Man, they got me pumped up on morphine and oxycodone. Boy, I was enjoying that helicopter ride. And they did. They flew me all the way back to Stockton. At the Stockton airport, they had a whole slew of cars. They had a whole brigade of officers there. And they were all sitting there saluting me. And they had all these cars. And they gave me a full dignitary protection escort all the way home to my house in northern Stockton from the airport. And they did. They shut down the freeway. All the freeways were shut down on that whole northbound side. They ended up escorting me back to my house. All the freeways, all the intersections they went through, I was escorted home. I had this hero's welcome coming home. It was awesome. My neighbors were out there. It was a great thing. And, slowly, at the end of the night, everybody started going home. And at the end of that, I looked at my wife and I said, it's going to be a ride, isn't it? She said, absolutely. And so it was going to be a journey. But it was going to be okay because I had all this support. All this family at the academy, they said, we're one big family. We're just going to keep pushing through. No matter what happens, we're going to take care of each other. That's what brothers and sisters do. And they did. They came over. They did work around the house. They really helped me out a lot. What do you need done, Mike? You need this hung up? You need this done? You need yard work? They poured concrete in the backyard so I can get my wheelchair to my shop where I did all my woodworking. It was great. The guys were around. A couple weeks later, the guys were texting. Everyone stopped by. And about a month go on. And it started to get a little bit harder. The pain started to get a little bit more. And the visits from the guys at work, that family, who we were, became less. And so that family wasn't as much a family anymore. It was more dysfunctional, and it started to break up. And pretty soon I was left alone on the island. And it was hard. And what do? My wife was the only person there. I did have a lieutenant, though, Bruce Canaston. And he would stop by. But I don't know. I didn't really want, I know it's good to have manager in the house come over and stop by. But I wanted to see my guys. I wanted to see the guys I was working with, graveyard partners. I wanted to see everybody. But I live too far from the office. Nobody's coming over. And so Bruce said, hey, Mike, I want to do something encouraging for you. I want to bring some guys over to your house. Would you mind? I said, absolutely, Bruce. Go ahead and bring them over. So I had these guys come over, and they were amputees that worked for our department. At that time, we had 4 officers on our department that were amputees. And I thought, this is just amazing. These guys came over to my house, and it was pretty encouraging to come over. And this was in November, and so I was getting really invigorated. Okay, I think I could do this. My physical therapist was coming over, occupational therapy. This stuff was going along. And I think we're doing okay. And then my wife, January 23rd, she goes back to work. But instead of going to work, we found out that she's going to be laid off after 10 years. They didn't need her no more. You see, with her being at home with me for 3 months, they found out they could do the work without her. And so that was another devastation. What do? So now we're without a job. I'm without a job. She's without a job. I don't even have a leg. I don't even know if I'm going to work anymore. I don't know what my options are. And so my lieutenant had contacted me. He said, Mike, what's going on? I said, I want to be able to help you out. And I said, I don't know. I don't need anything. I'm fine. But I wasn't fine. Because all this separation from my department, all this separation from my guys, I'm no longer feeling like a family. I'm starting to go through some depression. These medications are really messing me up. I'm in with insomnia. I can't sleep at night. I feel like I'm going crazy. And I feel like I want to kill myself. And then suicide starts to seep in. And when you have medication in a hand and a gun next to you, you just feel like that's your only option. I don't feel like I can keep doing this anymore. And I think it's just getting to the bottom of the barrel. I just can't keep moving forward. And I go, what am I going to do? How am I going to go? My wife had come in. I hid the medication. I hid the gun. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I don't want to take my life, but I don't want to be here suffering. I don't want to drag my family through this. I didn't know what my outcome was going to be. And I was reading a book called The Search of Meaning for Man by Viktor Frankl. And in there he said, the last of humans' greatest freedoms is the ability to choose one's own attitude in any given set of circumstances. I had to think about that. Any given set of circumstances. This is a man who wrote a book while he was in a Nazi internment camp and watched death and torture every single day. And I thought, if this man can do it, it might be possible. I became reinvigorated. I said, you know what? I called my boss back. I said, Lieutenant, what are my options? He said, Mike, you can retire. Nobody's going to say no. You can get a medical retirement. He goes, but if you don't, you can come back to work and I'll find something for you. I said, that's what I want. And so I did. I came back and I started running. They gave me a prosthetic that had a running leg on it. I said, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get back to work. As I got back to that physical shape, my wife is there. The physical therapist is supporting me. The occupational therapy, everybody's there to support me. Even my lieutenant. My guys still aren't there. But I have this other support network that's really supporting me. And it's wonderful. And I'm thriving. I'm just striving for greatness now. And I say, you know what, Bruce? I need to go back to light duty. I'm ready for light duty. So I do. And he goes, where do you want to go, Mike? And I said, I don't know. What about the academy? He said, you want to go to the academy? I said, yeah, I can go swimming. I can do driving, shooting. I can get back. He said, absolutely. Make some phone calls. And he did. And I was able to go back to light duty up at the academy. And I thought it was great. So I'm going to be able to do all this stuff. And I was up there and I was recuperating. I was swimming every single day, lifting weights, exercising. I'd run on the track. I was able to drive. They put me back through driving courses. I could only drive left-footed because I only got one leg. My prosthetic doesn't do anything. So they put me through all this pursuit, all this active driving, and it was great. I got to do this stuff. I could do this. I got this. And I had this support. I was like, man, this is the greatest thing. I'm going to be able to go back to work. And November 5th of 2012, it did. My doctor said, Mike, you're good to go. And they put me back in uniform November 5th, 2012. I got to go back to full duty. It was exciting times. And Bruce said, what do you want to do? My lieutenant, what do you want to do, Mike? You can do whatever you want. I said, Bruce, I may need some practice. He said, don't worry about it. Take a patrol car out and go out there on the back roads, these country roads, and just practice getting it out of the patrol car. Do whatever you want at your pace. And by him doing that, by him taking the time with me, encouraging me, and just developing me and saying, hey, you can do this. You got this. I had my family. They were supporting me at home. And I had my lieutenant supporting me at work. And that's what really helped me. And everybody said, Mike, you know, you have all this resilience about you. You went through all this and you're able to come back. And I said, it's not the resilience. I'm not a resilient person, but I have a support network where I can thrive. I have a work family that's encouraging me now. I have a home family that's done nothing but support me and gone through this whole trial with me together. And that's what's making me thrive. And I'm able to go back to work because of it. And as I'm able to go back to work, I'm able to thrive. And so I end up back at work. So when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about what's important now. And when I think about my struggles, and there's other guys out there like me, is there guys out there like me? And I start doing some reading. And I find out through the National Law Enforcement Officer Memorial that there's actually about 57,000 assaults that occur in our country every year on our officers. About 15,000 of those assaults result in injuries. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics say that 1 out of every 20 officers every single year is going to be injured. And that goes for corrections and for street cops. And if you look at medical retirements, about 52% of our officers in the country are going to be medically retired versus a regular service retirement. And when I thought about that, I go, man, there's a lot of guys out there that are hurt, that need help. And it came, and I said, you know what? Something's got to be done. And so I sat down, I started writing a program, and I was able to do this through California Post. They allowed me to write a program called Spectrum of Recovery, and that's what I did. But I was out there, and I realized that there's so much hurt, and there's so much that needs to be done. But it can't be done without support. And so I was fortunate enough to have a spouse at home. I was able to have family that was encouraging me, as well as my lieutenant that was encouraging me. But there's other officers that are out there that I've encountered that are not so fortunate. They've been through divorces. They're at home by themselves. And so they don't have that family element. And they're sort of put at home, and their work says, "Why you provide workman's comp insurance, we got EAP, that's all you need. And as soon as you have that, that's all you need." But that's not it, folks. That's not what these guys need. You see, I was teaching a first-line supervisor class a while back, and I like reaching out to officers that have been injured, and I've been fortunate to reach out to a lot of them, and a lot of them have given me a little bit of feedback. But I was teaching this one first-line supervisor course, and this guy comes up to me, he's a brand new sergeant, and he says, "Mike," and I say, "Yes, sir." He said, "I just wanted to let you know that you called me a while back, and it pissed me off." And I'm thinking, what did I say to this guy? The last time this happened in prison, somebody knocked the crap out of me. I hope I said the right things. And I go, "So what did I say?" He said, "You asked how I was doing." And he goes, "I deleted that voicemail. And I was even more pissed whenever you texted me, 'Hey, this is Mike Mitchell, how are you doing? I'm just reaching out to you to see how you're doing.'" He goes, "I don't know who the hell you were. I don't work anywhere near you. I didn't know who you were." And he goes, "And you're trying to reach out to me?" He goes, "I was having marital problems. I was having pain addiction medication problems. I was having all these financial problems. And the last thing I needed was some schmuck from some other area calling me." And he goes, "I was so mad I was going to throw that phone against the wall." He goes, "But I didn't." And he goes, "And then a while later, you called me again." And we started texting back and forth. And he goes, "I just wanted to say thank you for reaching out to me. Because for 6 months, I sat at home with nobody calling me, with nobody from work talking to me. And I felt separated. And I felt alone." So, folks, that's how our officers are. That's how our deputies are. That's how our agents are that are out there that are injured. And I don't know if you're at the executive level management. I don't know if you're regular management level, or if you're at the officer to line level, or if you're a non-uniformed person in your office. There's people that are out there on injuries, that are lost, they're alone, they're hurting, and somebody else thinks somebody's going to do something. My guys, the officers thought the sergeants were talking to me. The sergeant was assuming that the lieutenant was, and thank God he was. But those assumptions are for every department and every rank. That's what those assumptions go. And when they happen, unfortunately, people are hurt. Sometimes officers kill themselves at home when they're injured and they feel separated. So I'd encourage you today, in closing, that you go back and you evaluate your department, where you're at, your officers that are out there on injury, allied agencies. You can reach out to those guys, find out who's hurting. Offer them some support, offer them some encouragement, a simple text message to say hi, a simple phone call. And they may not answer back. They may throw their phone against the wall. But if you keep talking, they're going to keep hearing you. And by you hearing and you guys talking and they're listening, you guys are going to be able to affect somebody. You may not be able to affect everybody, but those few people that you will, you'll be able to save a life. So I encourage you to go out there to make a difference, not just in our communities and what we do, but within our ranks and taking care of each other as brothers and sisters. Thank you.